making faces now.
We are live.
But
I'll call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands,
which stands one nation,
One nation
under God,
under God,
indivisible, with
indivisible,
liberty
with liberty and justice for all.
justice for all.
And the agenda will be the oath of office for Daniel Cash.
have you stand up and I'll just have you raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Daniel Cash,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and I will faithfully discharge
the duties as General Board Member
the duties as General Board Member
of the Board of Education
of the Board of Education
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations, welcome to the board.
Congratulations, Dan.
So in discussing if we'd have to go Dan M or DC, Daniel informed me he likes to go by Daniel and Dan, just for the record.
Okay.
Got that, Ken?
Daniel and Dan, I like it. I
I'll
won't call
try.
you Dan anymore.
I'll try to do my best.
It's okay. It's something I learned to do.
All right, Richard will continue. Consent agenda, recommended action approve the items below, which are included in the consent agenda, which include 6A, the minutes, 7A, teaching staff appointment, 7B, for the 2020-2021 school year, 8C donation acceptance, 8C donation acceptance, 8D special education. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Yes.
Thank you, Colleen. Do you have a second?
Yes.
Thank you, Dan. Any discussion? Everybody all set with those items? Going through the consent agenda? If so, may I please have a vote? All,
They're gonna vote online
okay,
because they can vote. So did it not pop up for you?
I may-
No.
On the consent agenda.
It did for me.
You know what I mean? Could be. Like through, you know?
How about if you tell me how to vote, I'll call it. Just, do you want to say yes?
Yes. yes.
Okay, so yes,
I won't
Colleen?
rock the vote this one.
Yes.
yes, okay. Okay, so 7 yes.
okay. 7 yes, 0 no, the motion passes. For the good of the cause.
What's that? Oh,
Good of the
I
cause.
checked.
Okay. So we'll proceed right to the reports, budget status report. Yeah,
Treasurer's report?
sorry, treasurer's report.
Good done, both.
Yeah,
All right, treasury report, you do have July and August. And if you look at it, it's really our total balance from month to month. It's still, in July, it was 15.8 million in there, and then 16.9. Obviously, again, a good portion of that is coming from our ban that we got about a year ago. Plus all of our, the additional money in terms of our, fund balance, reserves, all that is really what's driving that in terms of our balance. Typically this time of year, we're not, our expenditures are fairly low as well. Whenever we have a start of a new fiscal year. Usually the biggest one to look at is kind of the outstanding checks, and you'll notice, small amount, 348,000 July, much larger amount outstanding at the end of August, $732,000. And really, that's attributed to the fact that the warrant for the month went out towards the end of August. So there wasn't a lot of time for our checks to get processed. I mean, a number of them went to capital, contractors and things like that. But really, I think August 29th is when we cut checks for the end of the month. So that's why you're seeing a sizable amount of outstanding balance. But our reserve accounts are there. I mean, our operating sweep account is still, in that 12 to 13 million dollar range. And that's attributed to the band. We're obviously seeing we're towards the latter part of the capital project, so bills are coming in. I mean, just in the last week alone, we have about $1.6 million that will be processed just for contracts for the construction project. So as the end gets near, those amounts will get larger, to fulfill contracts and obligations in terms of paying the contractors as they start working through their punch list. But the treasury report is at this point we're still flush with cash.
What's the two biggest ones? Is that part of the capital project?
It would be, so you have here $321,000 is a fairly big one. That's BOCES. Yeah, that was because of the 235 is DeJezer, which is a contractor. Yeah. And then the rest of them are relatively small in nature. A lot of them. Other questions on the treasury report?
Budget status?
Budget status, this is really more focused on our expenditures. Again, as I was just saying, our expenditures are usually fairly light over the summer months. You'll see on the expenditure overview, $1.6 million in terms of year-to-date expenses. And largely that is, kind of looking at our 12-month employees, their salaries, things like that, and really just gearing up for the new year. That's why you see a lot of unfavorables, because really a lot of money going out, not a lot of money actually coming in. But that's always the case. That happens every year. Schools, the districts that have a healthy treasury report and a healthy bank account, if you will, these are not problematic, because we have, if you look at it last year, our fund balance was sitting at about $4+ million. So we have the money there, for the first couple of months before our tax revenue starts coming in. So when you look at that, you'll see again the red highlight under equipment for that $6 million. That's tied to capital project stuff and things like that. So this is a very common July and August expenditure reports. Now, the revenue side, you'll look at it and say, oh my goodness, we brought in $16.7 million already. We are flush with cash, and well, that is misleading. We have not collected $16.7 million in revenue. Really, the truth of it is, it's probably more like the $5,600 that you see under the federal sources. That's actual money that has come in. But what we do every year is, once we have our tax levy and the amount that we're going to be raised through property taxes, in essence, it kind of gets processed as a receivable. If you look back to a year ago, it actually was in September, you will see that we collected over $16 million. We were sitting at about 97-98% of our revenue. In reality, that's not the case. We put it up there because that's money that we know will come in, unless we have lots of homeowners that decide not to pay their taxes on time. That would require 8,000, because we send out about 8,000 tax bills every year, a large portion of those not happening. So that is a standard practice there. So I didn't want you guys to think that we've already collected that money. That money is coming in. It got marked as a receivable a little earlier. Usually it comes in September. We did it at the end of August. One of the reasons is this year, surprisingly enough, we got all our tax information earlier than normal. You guys were able to vote on the tax levy and all that a week before because everything kind of came in earlier than we typically have. So therefore we were able to. Even though it looks favorable to us, in reality, it's just basically an accounting tool more so than anything else.
When does it get turned over to the county?
We will collect up until November, and then Lori sends a report to the county by November 15th, and that's sort of like the end date. We actually stopped collecting, I want to say November 4th or 5th, and that was in that resolution. After that point, we don't collect anymore. She submits a report, and then usually by early spring, the county reconciles everything and pays us what is still outstanding, and they, in essence, levy individual taxes and homeowner or through the county. And we know we're going to get the money, before the end of the school year. One thing good, it's surprising, surprise about the states, is they're actually paying their taxes much earlier than expected. And as the county treasurer told me just the other day on the phone, is they didn't hold anything back. He called me to let me know that we're going to be getting a direct deposit of $1.4 million by Thursday, and that's what the state owes for their portion of the property. Questions on budget status?
Moving along, the Health and Safety for Buildings and Grounds Committee, there's the quarterly report. The minutes from the September 10th meeting. Apologies for
That's all right. The notes. Really, if you look at it, we had two topics in this meeting. Is capital project update. Chris from Schoolhouse came in and gave a nice thorough update to the administrators and head custodians as to what's going on, when to expect certain things. They were able to bring up some concerns to Chris as well. So it was really a nice opportunity to just have everyone in the same room hearing from Schoolhouse where we are with most of these projects. We get the monthly reports from Schoolhouse as well, and they talked about the auditorium and the ceiling, and they started working on that, putting that up just the other day, well, this week as well. We kind of focused on the fact that currently none of the buildings have the A-phone access. So in terms of being able to buzz in, if you came in from both new vestibules, don't have them here, as well as the elementary school. As I was just saying to Roger, I just emailed the Linstar project manager as to why this is the case. The guy who's working here for whatever reason has been dragging his feet. So I've been back and forth with that, trying to get in, because it is, if someone comes, they have no way, they have signs up saying, call this number so that you can let them know that you're there. So right now they're kind of in the dark as to if someone comes to the main door. So we talked about that for some time. We obviously talked about the elevator at both buildings and where we are with that process. The elementary is in a little better shape. There's just some minor things that need to get done, and that came out of the inspection of the elevator, whereas here it's a much bigger issue. He had talked about it, and was the 6 to 8 week lead time to getting the elevator up and running here. It's all dependent on getting parts in and doing the work and stuff like that. The track lines, if they haven't been down there, they are complete. Really, they just need to kind of get their materials out of there, remove some of the old track that's been sitting in a pile, fix the fence, do some seeding and stuff as to where they just drove over the grass. So they're working on that as well. And we talked about that punch lists are being generated in terms of kind of finishing out things, the heating systems, things like that. That's kind of where the overview for the capital project that he talked about, and the other portion was, each of the buildings shared what they're doing in terms of the cleaning, daily cleaning, as well as what's happening at nights in both the buildings and the buses, to ensure that we're disinfecting and giving the kids and the staff as clean of a building as possible. And everything we got from this meeting was, the staff are doing exactly what's the plan said we were going to do. They're cleaning on a regular basis. They have a schedule in terms of bathroom cleanings and wiping down surfaces. Every room at night is getting cleaned, whether it's up here where floors are getting mopped in the classrooms because we have a tile or carpet is getting cleaned. So really what we got out of this part of the meeting is the fact that the staff are ensuring that the buildings are clean each and every day, and then at night, so that it puts everyone in the best possible position the next day. So that's kind of the meeting in a nutshell.
Questions?
Couple questions. Regarding the elevator in this building, is there anybody who's inconvenienced by that?
A lot of people.
Yes, it's tremendous inconvenience.
Yes.
This would be especially the case for carrying heavy loads up and down up and down floors here. So the custodians with their big floor cleaning machines have had to find other routes and other ways to move machinery. And then also troubling, although again, people are very resourceful, has been the cafeteria staff. And Dana has been over here many times working with them and our principals and I and Karen and many of us have been helping carry trays up and down the stairs. Because as you know, part of our reopening plan is to have meals in classrooms. And so that means third, second, first floor. Well, the cafeteria is on the first floor. And that means carrying, meals for everybody up and down the stairs. Also the case with breakfast. Breakfast is on a cart. And when kids walk in the door, second floor door, there's a cart there with breakfast food. Well, that cart has to get up from the first floor to get there. So yes, this has been a real struggle, I would say, especially for our support staff, custodians, food service. We're frustrated that it's going to take this long.
6 to 8 weeks, you're saying?
Yeah.
Which is a whole new elevator?
No, so the project included a reconditioning of the elevator
Sure.
as it exists. But while they were reconditioning the elevator, they found a weakness in the hydraulics down at the base, where it's been carved into the floor or whatever, the ground at the very bottom of the elevator shaft. And so their recommendation has been to replace that. And that's significant, both the parts and the labor that go into that, because they actually have to get somebody in there with a jackhammer to hammer out and recreate this hole. So it's complicated. On top of that, we thought the price was very high, so we asked another company for their recommendation, and they had the same recommendation, but it was a different price. So right now we're working on all the details and how we can make this happen. Best quality, lowest price, fastest process. I wish we could say that we're going to get there with speed. And I don't think we are. I think it's going to be 2 months. But as far as price goes, we think we might be able to do a little better than we originally thought.
is there still, was there another elevator? Was there a partial elevator that we used to be at the very, it used to be the home ec room back in the day? Is there a partial elevator there? No.
No, we were hoping that we could maybe rig up, one of those dollies, but we haven't been able to figure that one out either. Yeah,
Yeah, sure.
dumbwaiter, yes.
But there's no student impact, handicap issues.
Well, it's potentially there could be.
Sure.
Right now, there is not.
I also wondered about the fog, the disinfecting fog. Maybe I'm treading too close to the weeds there, but I'm just curious about its impact on people with asthma, for example. Does it leave a residue?
Judy?
It does leave a residue, but they do it when no one is, they're not doing it when kids are in the classroom or anything like that. I think at elementary school, they do it twice a week, in the morning and stuff like that. Everything that they use is a safe product. It's,
EPA approved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have pretty stringent criteria for using any type of chemicals within schools.
I'm glad to hear it.
They just can't just buy something off the street. It definitely has to follow the certain guidelines in terms of being approved and being safe for people to be around and stuff like that. I mean, even people putting it down. So, over the years, they have brought in different types of chemicals that are definitely better because of that. They're not as whatever toxic and stuff like that. They are approved for schools and things like that.
I've been through a lot of that with my job, and there's a spray time and there's a dry time.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then there's a settling time, which is generally about 3 times the dry time. And the residue actually provides, most cases, provides a barrier that it continues to fight out and be disinfected. Which is the downside to it, have a visual, appears like there's a dust or something.
Right.
Most of them work very well. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you, Dana. Legislative liaison report, Holly.
Okay, so I had the opportunity yesterday with 3 or 4 other district liaisons, from I believe more the northern mid part of the state, to meet via Zoom with Elise Stefanik. Throughout the year, there's different representatives. She happened to be this one on this rotation. So we had a pre-meeting on Friday with just the liaisons and the individual that was in charge of organizing it. I forget her name right now, but in any event, we had a pre-meeting on Friday. They essentially, it gives you an opportunity to lobby for things that are of concern for your particular district. Initially, it starts out with what seems to be, it's very scripted, and there are certain bullet points that you're supposed to hit on during this, meeting that we had with Ms. Stefanik. And so most people, initially, we attempted to hit to the bullet points, and I'm just going to share a couple of them with you. One was school nutrition, the cost of the changes in the nutrition program since we've had to go remote, creating grab and go meals, having to deliver to remote students that are out within the district, and how that's impacted budgets across some of the districts. Other bullet points were the concern over equity with students with broadband access, and that's a great concern. They brought up the fact that with the stimulus packages that were offered, the initial 1, 2, or 3 of them, that private schools were able to participate in the payroll protection program, but the public schools are not. So private schools were getting, a really nice grant, and the public schools were left to dry. So that was a great concern. Some other things that they touched upon, the cost of remote instruction, how that has changed things, increases in retirement requests. I had brought up, in addition to a couple of those, I had also discussed just how the childcare industry has been impacted greatly in our part of the state due to COVID. Many centers closing, home providers closing, and I think on some level we kind of put blinders on, not thinking that it affects what goes on in K through 12, but it does. It affects universal pre-kindergarten. It affects the availability of our faculty and staff to have access to childcare. I know of at least one faculty member in our district that is not in-house this year because they did not have childcare. So I did bring that up. Representative Stefanik was very open to our ideas. I think regardless of what political party that they are affiliated with, we had Schumer a month ago. They do try to go back and forth across the aisle in Washington to try to lobby for us. But again, it's an uphill battle. The other thing that many of the other liaisons mentioned was the new dashboard that has come out of Albany, where districts are required to do daily reporting on COVID as to the numbers in the district. And they all agreed that that's great in theory, but most of the districts aren't testing. So we're all going to look great on the dashboard with 0 accounts every day, unless a child or a faculty member is ill and they go to the doctors and they're tested. There's still, they're saying 30 to 35% asymptomatic people out there. So they all agree that the dashboard really isn't probably really indicative of what could potentially be going on. We're all doing our very best, but so that was it. It was very interesting. It was wonderful to network with liaisons from other districts. I do think we're blessed on many levels as to our shortfall this year. One of the other districts has over a $10 million shortfall with the 20% reduction from New York State, and they are scrambling to try to figure out how they can bridge this horrific amount of money, and they're looking at a lot of layoffs in their district. So that's it. That's the news. And again, it was just great. It's a wonderful thing to be able to participate in, and also to try to share some of our concerns from our district. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Paul? All right, information for the board. There's the board self-evaluation. This by policy, we must complete by October, I believe it is, the end of October. So there's about 40 questions for you all to go in and answer. And then of course, just as important are the open-ended questions at the end of the evaluation. So our goals and objectives are for 100% participation with that. Understandably, Daniel, if you're not comfortable after one meeting completing that, that's totally okay. But if you all could just get in there, there's Karen's put the link to the policy, which then leads you to the self-evaluation. If you could complete that, we're looking at next board meeting, Karen. Does that sound
October 6th. Yeah, if you bring it back then. They can either bring it or mail it to me.
okay?
I didn't do it on a Google Doc because I didn't know that would be anonymous.
Right. So yeah, that's a very good point. It is anonymous. So it goes right to Karen. She compiles the self-eval and then hands it over to me, and I'll look it over and look for highlights and give just a highlighted version at our second meeting in October.
Karen, is this what you were talking about giving to Joni and I?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and I'll just mail you the hard copy.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Is it easier for you hard copy or electronically?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
It's just then I know it comes from you.
don't think you remember.
Right.
There's 3 other items. The NISBA convention, which this year is virtual. It's held over a 2-week period, so that makes it a little bit more difficult than simply going. But again, we have budgeted for 3, 4 people
think
to
4.
attend. So,
Nobody had responded, they wanted to do it, but
Right.
I'm curious though, Martha wants to do the pre-convention communication thing, which is part of it, so I don't actually think that we need to vote on that.
No.
Do you agree?
Agreed.
Since we've already agreed to do that?
Oh, cool.
Okay. So I'll sign you up for that.
You're just doing the pre, not the convention? Or you're doing the convention as well?
Not the convention.
Okay. So if anybody else is interested, please get a hold of, let Karen know. Also, as a reminder, our next board meeting, October 6th, is generally our meeting that takes place in Wilmington. And for reasons of distancing, we move that to this site here. And also the self-evaluation is there, so. Anything else anybody has questions under information? If not, we'll turn it over to the superintendent's report.
Thanks. You might remember that 2 weeks ago, the last time we met, that had been the first day back for faculty. A lot has changed in the last 2 weeks. A week ago, we welcomed back students, first time in 6 months that we had students in our buildings. And so we have now been open for about a week or so, maybe an extra day. And I just wanted to share with you some of the some of what's been going on. I guess I wanted to start out with positive attitudes. It's been pretty clear to me that our reopening has gone well in terms of how well it's been received by the people that matter the most, and that is students, teachers, families. We're getting a lot of good feedback, and you know, I think some of that feedback is just, you know, students whose eyes are smiling behind those above those masks, happy to be back, teachers as well. It's been a good start, and I know that whenever I speak with anybody, especially those who are concerned at first, because it's been a dramatic shift to go from remote instruction to in person, people's comfort level has really increased over the last week as well. So I think really getting into the swing of things and getting people back on board in classes and in cafeterias and in gymnasiums has been a really positive thing. So a very good start. I want to talk a little bit about some of the practices that we're following. I know earlier Dana mentioned, you know, that we're cleaning the way we said we would, and that's really true with really the practices that we put in that reopening plan. And I say that having checked on that a few times as well. So for example, you know, we said we'd be screening people, and we are screening as we come in, and we're screening in different ways in different places. So if you're at the middle and high school, you see that students are being screened in cars with the thermometers, the no-touch thermometers, and then at the doorway as they walk in through what's really a new entranceway, the front of the building, which is you know, kind of nice to see that we're putting that beautiful front of our building to use, and our students who are walking or going in through that door at the middle and high school. And then on the buses, we have some thermometers that have been recently installed on the buses that we're making use of. We're trying to figure out their durability and temperature changes. So we're also putting the regular thermometers to work as well. At the elementary school, we have students coming off the buses, going in one door, getting rides in through another door. In all cases, they're being screened as well. So as we said, we're doing a lot of screening, and people seem to be responding to that very well. In terms of cleaning, I think Dana mentioned we are cleaning as we said we would, and disinfecting in the evenings or the mornings, depending on the school. Again, different schools have different practices based on both their physical structure and also their the staffing. In terms of masks, masks are being worn throughout the day except during mask breaks. In terms of ventilation and filtration, we have over Martha's shoulder, you see one of our filtration systems. That's in this particular room. You would see those throughout the buildings. So those are air purifiers that have filters that are high quality filters. Those are working, but old-fashioned windows are working very well as also, as our HVAC units. And then, and don't minimize this, the importance of our outdoor spaces. So we've been making a lot of use of outdoor spaces in both schools. You'll see kids in the front of the building, the back of the building, at the elementary school on the trails. So again, trying to make best use of fresh air. And then, of course, 6-foot distancing and hand hygiene. Again, all the practices that we said we were going to put into place. If you were to come into the building, you would see them all in action. Now, as far as glitches, sure, we've had a few. I think I heard it being chatted about before the meeting. On the very first day, a week ago, we had some long lines of cars as we were all getting our feet on the ground with the screening process. So there's a lot of things going on. There is, we've asked families to consider driving their children to school or having their children walk to school rather than riding the buses. So that creates new traffic patterns with more cars at both school buildings. In particular, at this building, we were backed up, some would say, to the firehouse on the first day, which I don't think that's ever happened before. But I will say that people are resourceful. And I would say that's true on both ends of that. The people who are doing the screening, very resourceful and moving traffic along, being faster at that screening. And then on the other side, some of the families making some choices about where to drop off and all of that, the way people do. So the last few days at the middle and high school, the drop-off's been very fast, much faster than it was, probably 20 minutes faster than it was. And at the elementary school, it's really been very smooth from the beginning. So we're working out some of the glitches, but really the number of glitches are small. And I think overall the successes are many. In terms of other reopening issues, we do have athletics that will be coming on board next week. Now, you may have heard that two of the sports that were originally announced that could restart, volleyball and football, won't be restarting, not during the fall season. So they've been moved, at this point, they've been moved to March, April schedule, which is not any one particular season, it's really in between seasons. So that's to be determined later. But in the meantime, for us, cross country and soccer will be allowed to start on Monday, the 21st. So the athletic directors are ironing out the details there, and there's plenty of details to iron out. So many thanks to our athletic director, John Burdick. He's been working with the section and the leagues and just his colleagues to try and figure this out. And then just some other positive news I want to make sure that I share with you. One of them has to do with breakfast and lunch. Now we've spoken in here before about the meal program and, could we get on the free meal program, which we've not been able to do, not in the standard way, but lo and behold, the pandemic has brought on some opportunities. And one of them is a program to waive the costs of, to waive, it's the waiver for eligibility, I believe, is basically to allow schools to qualify to provide free meals for all students. We were able to do that over the summer through a special summer program that was established. And then we believe, and I'm saying this somewhat cautiously because as Dana points out, a lot of the details have not been provided yet. A lot of the processes aren't in place and we don't know if the money will hold out. But right now, we are offering free breakfast and lunch to all of our students. We're going to extend that into October. And we're hoping that it will go to the end of the calendar year. So we'll see about that. But right now we're looking at free meals, and Dana's taken the lead on making that happen. Thank you very much for all of your work on that. I think our kids are really lucky to have that option. And then we did also receive another grant, and you may have heard me mention this during budget season. We received this notice last month. This is something called the Small Rural School Achievement Program, and it comes out of the Department of Education. So we wrote a grant for approximately $20,000 to cover the cost of a home visitor 1 day a week. And that home visitor will visit families with children of all ages. Any age will benefit. So that this sort of goes to Colleen's point, I'm going to say earlier, where she said that when you have families with younger children, and those issues have an impact on K-12, well, it's true across the board. And so our hope is to establish a connection between the school and families at an early age to provide the kind of support that can help children and families prepare and really establish that readiness for what's to come. So we're working our way through the details of that grant, but we're hoping to use this program to build connections with children in our community and families, children of the ages of birth to age 4, which is where we really pick them up at pre-K. So to that program. And so she's got the time, she's got the ideas. She'll be not just visiting, but also providing some resources along the way, including things like children's books and any other resource that she can offer families. So this is more good news. So it's nice to have good news in the midst of a time like this. And it's also nice to see, for all of us to see, that in these challenging times that we're able to navigate them. Certainly we're doing it one day at a time, but right now we're navigating them well. And so there's a lot to be happy with. There's a lot to be proud of. And I think we can all be proud of how we're doing right up to this point. And that's everything I have.
Well, congratulations on successful opening.
Thanks.
Heard a lot of positive feedback and envy from some other school districts.
No, I
Yeah,
think the children are very excited to be back in school. And I agree with you, Roger. Just you can see the smiles behind the masks because you can see it in their eyes.
How'd the BOCES go? Any report on getting over there and parking?
No problems that I've heard of. We have, we are still busing some kids, but we're busing within the limits that we established. And then other kids are driving with that permission. I think the only real glitch is that BOCES isn't operating 5 full days. It's 4. And Wednesdays. So that, because we're not operating that way, that causes some scheduling problems. We're adjusting to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Linking goals with agenda items. You have anything? I've got a list here. I'll give to Sharon.
Rogers with students first and foremost with meals and how the opening went.
Anyone else have anything? They say I've got 7 things here, so I'll just take them all unless you all like to do it. If you can't read my pen scratching. If there are no other, we'll go right on to the capital project update. You have summer reports, status reports, as well as the summary from September 14th. Any highlights you'd like to point out, Dana or Roger?
I do like your point that at this, by now, that everything's out of date.
Right, so every time I provide you with background information, and it's about a week old, right? So, yeah, and so that means we've had a week of progress and a week of some setbacks, so, which is not unusual. We've had a lot of progress. If you've come in through School Street, you can see that the wall is finally reaching close to its end. It's not there yet. But it does look like the concrete portion of the wall is, looking like, I don't know, I'm going to guess it'll be completed by the end of September with the stonework going on as
In the
well.
walkway, you can almost see,
Yeah,
they've
you
got
can-
the
yeah.
crusher run down for the walkway,
Right.
so that is
Yeah.
promising. It actually is taking
Right.
shape.
We tested it out, going stewards yet? No.
I have not.
Yep.
They probably would allow me, they wouldn't let me walk through there.
Yeah. But, in other areas, probably the big jobs right now are going on in the auditorium. And then with the roof, and as you know, we've struggled with the roofing. The roofing date, substantial completion date was a couple of weeks ago. The roofs are not complete. The elementary school is still missing the metal roof on the new entranceway. The middle and high school, if you look up, you'll see that the rubber roof is still not fixed at the edges with the metal edging that you would see in other parts of the roof. And then the auditorium, and then those portions that are attached to the auditorium, like the exit, that whole construction project going on in the rear entrance area is essentially to make room for the exit from the auditorium, since we moved the exit in order to expand the wings. So the auditorium project that we had originally established is still being completed, that the expansion of the wings, the exit area, et cetera. The repairs that occurred with the roofing leaks that we had, those are, we're making progress on those. They've been working on those this week. That's the plaster work and the proscenium at the entrance of the stage area. And then, of course, the additional pieces having to do with the ceiling work. That's also ongoing, and that will be ongoing for longer. So that's a big project undergoing completion. The roof continues to be a stress. And then there's the completion of the projects that, are what they call substantially complete, but substantially complete is not complete, right? So there's still punch lists to do, and balancing of the heating system. That's very important, that they're going to start next week. We didn't plan on having a freezing night on September 15th, so it's not starting until September 21st. Everything's fine. And then, again, small jobs at both buildings, elementary, middle, and high school. So there's plenty to talk about. There's plenty for you to look at if you're interested in seeing the progress. Those documents have good descriptions and good photographs. As Dana pointed out, they're also out of date at this point, but you can really see what we've been talking about in those photographs and get some pretty good detail. Does anybody have any questions about the projects?
Hey, go back, I'm reading the letter from you.
Yes.
Attorney, you go right to it. So where do we stand with that? So they just rejected the liquidated damages? Are they saying, I'm reading the letter, but
So just to summarize, right? So the roofing, we've had some leaks in the roof.
yeah,
And we've had delays with the roof. And then we've had, as a result of the leaks from the roof, we've had damages to the school building itself, which we've been in the process of repairing. So I'm pointing those out as facts. And when those points have all been brought to the attention of the roofing company. This would be Elmer Davis Roofing Company out of Rochester. They have rejected all of those points. And so we continue in somewhat of an adversarial manner of communicating. That doesn't mean the roofing work has stopped, but I can tell you the roofing work isn't moving terribly quickly. We do have attorneys involved on both sides. Your reading is a letter from me responded to by a letter from Elmer Davis's attorney. So how'd I do, Liam? But we also have had our attorneys involved in previous letters and in consulting along the way. So it's unfortunate. They have opted to accept no responsibility for any of the problems that have emerged. So our insurance company right now is covering the costs. And then I imagine that, as insurance companies tend to do, they'll be working with other insurance companies to try and recoup what we all believe really isn't our insurance company's responsibility. So that's unfortunate. Again, none of this is really a reflection on like the individuals we tend to work with. This is much more of an organizational kind of issue. But that's where it stands. Right? We've got a few more letters. I just happened to share with you
Yeah,
these.
I mean, it seems like for the size of the project, there's gonna be some lawyers involved at some point.
Yeah.
And how many subcontractors there are.
Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah. So.
Along with the construction manager, there should be an attorney on site.
Just kidding.
Any other questions or comments? If not, change orders, there are 3 there, all related to the auditorium, I believe, asbestos removal and then 2 auditorium.
Yeah.
Those are all been voted on and approved. So thank you for sharing those. Any questions on those? If not, go on to the discussion part of the meeting. One item under discussion is the succession planning. There was a link to, or a attachment, which was based on a work session that was held previous years. I'm not sure when. We went over sort of the succession planning with 3 positions anyhow: superintendent, business official, and then the athletic director. So this gives a little bit more information, well, a lot more information. And I will take the opportunity to apologize. I did not get to what I promised to, but I will before the next meeting, sort of wrap all this up, the 2 documents. Martha, I'll pass by you probably.
Yeah,
before
that's
then.
helpful.
And but this document is extremely helpful, giving me 3 options of how to pursue replacement of personnel, key personnel. Any questions or comments?
Helpful.
Minutes from last board meeting, that's under consent, as is the first item under personnel matters, the teaching staff appointment. Hallelujah. Appointment of extracurricular activities coordinators, that's under consent as well. Coaching staff, recommended action upon recommendation of the superintendent, approve the fall coaches and volunteer assistants for the fall 2020 as noted below. The action may be changed or rendered null and void should the athletic season be altered or canceled due to the COVID-19 crisis. May I have a motion to approve the coaching? Thank you, Martha. Second, please.
I did have a couple of questions, and I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn on this, but what do we do about the normal salaries going into this fall with the fall coaching staff when, they're starting almost a month later and we're not even sure what's going to happen with it? What do we do?
That's a good question. There is a lot that isn't known right now, Colleen, and
Okay.
We are starting late, but we don't actually know how long the season is going to go. So it could actually go later. And until we get some facts about that, we're probably not going to know what percentage of the season we're looking at. And so
Okay.
we've been sort of holding off on that part of the conversation because of that, not knowing when the finish is. So we're starting 3 weeks late, but we're not necessarily finishing at the normal time. The potential is anywhere from the normal time sooner, the normal
Right.
time, or all the way, and believe it or not, the way it's written has this all the way to Christmas for the fall season, which we don't expect, but but the possibilities are there, so it's really hard to determine right now.
No, that makes sense. Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Daniel, did your voting come out?
I'm refreshing it to see if I can get it to show up.
Did you get my vote, Karen?
I did, I'm just.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, nothing showing up.
So do you want to just tell me your vote?
I will-
Yes, okay. Martha, would you please do me a favor? Because I don't have voting privileges. When the next one comes up after you vote, would you walk over and look at his computer with him to see why it's not popping up for him?
I can try, sure.
I also can no longer see any of the executive notation
Hmm.
of the items. So before, when I checked them 2 days ago, I went through the agenda.
Hmm.
I could see all that, and then now I can still see some of the documents, but there's no comments.
Right,
Huh.
So
like
Because
you're
I checked
like you're not
before
logged in as a
was
board
over
member
here.
all of
Yeah,
a sudden,
so-
right? Yeah, right.
I mean, I get it. Okay, I got it.
Because I checked to make sure all your settings were proper. Maybe you want to log out and log back in,
Yeah. When in doubt, turn it off and turn it back on.
No.
right?
Good IT. Is everybody voting?
Yes, 7, yes, I'm sorry.
So the fall coaching staff passes 7-4. Teaching staff, long-term medical leave of absence upon recommendation of the superintendent, accept the medical leave of absence from Jeanette Dugan, social studies teacher at the middle high school, effective September 8th, 2020 through November 27th, 2020.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dan. Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion, comments on this? If not, please vote.
Yeah.
Or-
Oh, good.
Now things are actually making sense when you guys are referencing stuff.
She'll be missed as a teacher when she's gone
Yes.
or out.
That's a short.
I'm just waiting for Joan to vote.
Joan, you still there?
Yes.
She nodded, okay, so 7, yes.
Okay. Long-term, the leave is approved 7-4. Long-term teaching staff appointment, the recommendation is Michelle Minot is hereby appointed to the long-term position of social studies teacher in middle and high school, replacing Jeanette Dugan, beginning September 8th, 2020 through November 27th, 2020. Salary will be in accordance with the Article 23B1 of the negotiated agreement of the LPEA dated July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2023. This service will not be credited.
Yes.
Colleen, second.
Yes.
Colleen first, Dan second.
What's going on?
Colleen, you can't be first and second.
I couldn't hear you for a second, sorry.
With the politicians, that the politicians are rubbing off on you, Colin.
They definitely are. I'm ready to go to Albany. On to DC.
Can somebody, Joan, can you vote?
I'll second. Yes.
Yes, okay, 7 yes.
Okay, 7-4-0 against. Approved. Additional action items, the anti-bullying proclamation. Upon recommendation of the superintendent, the attached anti-bullying proclamation. Would you like it read? Anybody? Okay. Please read that on your own. It's a very important document. So we have a motion to pass the anti-bullying proclamation.
Yes.
Second,
Okay.
Martha, any discussion on it?
Hopefully we'll get recognized again.
Yes,
on this.
another banner for our wall. We'll get up there with the sports teams.
There you go.
No more discussion, if you please vote.
I added the little people at the top this year,
Yes, I like that.
Rick.
Stay together.
7 yes.
Okay, 7-4-0. Next is the fund balance allocation. So I put in the option so that we had an option to vote with based on the discussion last time, and then we'll discuss it if that's the option, and we can amend the motion. So, recommended action, whereas the Lake Placid Central School has an unspent balance from the 2019-2020 general fund expenses of approximately $1,300,000. Whereas the Lake Placid Central School has the opportunity to transfer into established reserve funds. Whereas the Board of Education has been presented with 4 options for adjustments for the unassigned fund balance. Be it resolved, the Board of Education approves the unspent balance from the 2019-2020 general fund expenses to the accounts listed on option 3 as per the attached. Be it further resolved, the Board of Education further directs the Assistant Superintendent for Business, Finance, and Support Services to make the said transfers to the accounts listed on option 3 as per the attached. May I have a motion to accept?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Joan. Second,
Second.
thank you, Colleen. Discussion, please.
How often is it that we have a number that I haven't spent?
I haven't
I
said
don't think,
Never.
I think a couple years ago, it was upwards of $700,000. Probably 4 or 5 years ago, I think, probably at the start of the
Yeah.
BOCES project.
Yeah, this is a
Seems like
rare,
a lot of money.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think last year we were a little over 300,000.
Well, when you think about what happened last year and we didn't spend it all.
Yeah, no, it's my mind.
It gives us an opportunity to refund from the BOCES allocation expenditure.
Well, and the other piece is the unknown that's in front of us. We don't know. We know what we're looking at this year, but we don't know what we're looking at next year and in the years to come. So that's really the, I think that's really what we're recommending here. Is we're recommending that, the board recognize that we may need to utilize all that fund balance to maintain in the year to come. We would expect that when we start working on budgets we'll probably start in the fall, but once the winter hits and we hear about state aid recommendations, and we also look at CPIU, which will impact our tax levy cap, that we may be looking at significant shortfalls. We certainly don't know. So much has changed, so much is changing, but a lot to worry about there. So
Please, if anybody has a disagreement with the option 3, I believe that was from the last board meeting. We all sort of circled around that one, if I recall correctly. But if you are in disagreement, please speak up.
No, option 3 works.
I'd like to thank Dana for giving me time today to help me understand this.
That's a important concept to grasp, the unrestricted versus restricted, and all the different pockets you can put your money in. Any further discussion, comments? If not, please vote.
Seven yes.
Okay, 7-4-0 against, the motion passes. Next up is the donation acceptance. That's under the consent. As is 8D, which is the special education. 9, for good of the cause. Anything, Karen?
No.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to bring something up.
Sure.
More is just information. I don't know if my family was the first, but in the screening process of going through the door this morning, my son said he had a sore throat and was turned away. The process of getting him back into school. Doctor's note required. We were told to take him to our healthcare provider and have him checked out before he could come back to school. We've done that, have a doctor's note. The process of once the kid is turned away, getting them back into school. If a COVID test is done, how long before you can get them back into school? If siblings are involved, you know, should the sibling be sent home too? Things to think about, you know. My wife that's a teacher also, you know, so I have 3 members of my family in this building, and if one's sent home, should all 3 of them be sent home? You know,
Right. So I'll mention something having to do with the protocol, which was developed by the State Department of Health. So New York State Department of Health return to school protocol essentially asks for 3 things, and you pretty much mentioned them, Dan. For the symptoms to recede, for a note from a medical provider, and for a negative COVID test. And we knew when we saw that, along with what the symptoms are, which are a long list of fairly common symptoms, we knew that this was going to mean troubling moments for families like you're experiencing. I do apologize for your experience with that, and you're not alone. So this is, I would say, up to this point, we've probably had a dozen situations like this. Essentially, very common. Students come to school, they go to the nurse, and they have to go home for whatever it is. On a common year, that's a very common thing. This is an uncommon year. So the same thing's happening with children having sore throats and stomach aches and headaches and coughs. Only now those fit into the list of COVID symptoms. So the Department of Health and our nurses are trying really hard to adhere to, you know, these challenging situations to this return protocol. Now, the truth is, and I say the truth, but I'm not an expert on this particular truth, but I would venture that students and staff who have any one of these symptoms, probably 99.9% of the time, are simply experiencing a symptom from a normal kind of ailment, not COVID-19. And so we're not reacting to everything as COVID-19. What we are doing, however, is going through the protocols. But we're not making assumptions. And I know that's one of your concerns, and I think that you're not alone there. Should we all be assuming that every student who has a sore throat or a headache or a cough is a positive case. We are not doing that. However, we are walking through the protocols. That may seem sometimes like just a little bit difficult to comprehend, and it has been. And there's a lot of kind of difficult, complex moments like that. But we're trying to recognize on the one hand that we cannot be overreacting to all these kinds of things, and yet on the other hand, we have to overreact in the way that we're being asked to with these protocols. So it's a struggle, and we don't have it all perfectly figured out. It's true at both levels, and it has been true across the grade levels. So we have young kids, 4 and 5 and 6 years old, and we have older juniors, seniors who have experienced this.
So I know it's the protocol.
Yeah.
And with the opportunity gap and stuff on this, the healthcare provider told us that, you know, the COVID test is out of pocket. It's not covered by the insurance because you are requesting. It's not something that they would automatically do. So
yeah,
having every family that, you know, has somebody sent home because of a sore throat or a headache or a runny nose, to have to go to a doctor to get a note to come back to school and have to have a COVID test, you know, are these families capable of having to do that? You know,
Is a COVID test that's in the protocol?
yeah, it's one of the three.
I think, Dan, that many of those families in that category that you're referencing probably are in some type of insurance policy that does cover it. Whether it be Medicaid or in the exchange, I'm not positive, but in listening to you, Roger, you're really between a rock and a hard place because you do have to adhere to the protocols. I mean, like you said, 99.9% of the time, it's going to be the seasonal colds and flus that we all get, but you're doing what you have to do. And it's a very difficult position.
Well, one thing we are doing, just so you know, because Dan, we're aware of these problems, of course, and we don't have great answers, but we've been in regular contact with the healthcare community. So right before this meeting, I was on the phone with our school doctor, who was also in a leadership position with Adirondack Health, and sort of sharing what some of these struggles are, because there's more to it with the protocols too, because now the Department of Health and the medical community are talking about finding more gray areas in that protocol, which that may be fine or that may not be fine, depending on who you talk to. So they're having meetings as well. So that's one of the things. Matter of fact, we were in conference this evening, getting ready for their medical conference. I'm not sure what it's called. There's a meeting tomorrow where they're going to be raising a lot of these points. We don't have all this stuff figured out. But one thing we are doing is we're in touch with them. And so we'll keep on following up with this. Yeah. And that's not a great answer, but it's kind of the answer we have right now.
Healthcare started out the same way, and it's evolved into now you must have certain symptoms tied with some sort of COVID exposure. So hopefully they start out hard and then get soft as they go along. But during a meeting today, I heard of the stresses on the primary care, the family practice, but in all three, Pepper Lake, Saranac Lake, and Lake Placid are inundated with pediatric appointments.
Yeah, and we knew that would happen.
Sure.
And so we were in touch with them beforehand to ask if they had the capacity, and they were working on it. That's why they're doing a lot of telephone and video appointments to try and speed things along. And so, you know, they've been working hard, knowing what was coming, just as we've been trying to figure it out as well. But it continues to be a work in progress. There's no question about that.
So is they're quarantined now until you get the results back? COVID test?
No, because he didn't go through a COVID test.
Okay, he didn't meet the criteria.
He didn't meet the criteria. But this, as far as the practitioner is concerned, but with the school, now we have to go and get the COVID test because of the protocol sheet. So the rock and the hard place
You're
again.
stuck there, right?
It's a tough thing because if anyone was reading the NISBA eclipse today, they've already got a positive case in Albany, in a school district in Albany and in Auburn. And I just, it's going to be a really interesting winter because of these protocols, but again, you just never know. And I do think it's going to create havoc, but I don't know. I think the protocols are there for a good reason.
So they're not offering free testing anymore.
Very symptomatic, or you just can't drive up and get one. If you- that's how-
And depending on who refers you, the speed of the
Correct.
response, right? So if it is through your medical provider, then you're going to know sooner. And
It
if,
goes to a different lab.
So do you have any idea what the out-of-pocket expenses?
how what?
What the out-of-pocket expenses? And you don't know.
I don't know.
Albany just couldn't help with the unfunded mandates. They just couldn't stop.
Every single thing that we're doing
Yeah.
right now is an
That's
unfunded
awesome.
mandate. We do have some, and Dana will talk about at some point along the way, potential for reimbursement through some agencies and programs. But essentially, everything we're doing, whether we're buying these filtration systems or, or all of these things, this is all coming out of our budget.
It would be interesting to find out for many of our disadvantaged students if, for our low-income families, if those insurance policies do cover these COVID tests, whether it be Medicaid or one of the exchange programs. I just think it would be really curious to find out, and I'm hoping that the case is that those tests are being covered for those families. Because that 43% or whatever we're at free and reduced, many of those families do fall in those categories, and I would hope that their insurance would cover.
So they just, if you just don't get the test, you theoretically would just never come back. Not even waiting.
Anybody else have anything on this topic?
Sorry you're going through that and for the other families too.
Bless you.
Allergies?
On the list.
You're going home, Karen.
Suggested to run,
That's right. One COVID test and all the sneezing. Adjournment phase of the meeting. Again, as was mentioned, the next meeting is October 6th, and it has been moved from Wilmington to this location. Then followed by October 20th, and then goodness, we're in November already. Old business topics. I took off the succession planning because it's on the agenda now. Any new topic items anybody'd like to add? If you can't think of any now, but between now and the 5th of October, giving Karen a day to work on the agenda, just give one of us an email. Anything else anybody has? If not, I will recommend action will be to adjourn the meeting. I'll need a motion, please.
Yes.
Second, Colleen. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I think it's 74-0 against the meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye, friends.
Aye.
Bye-bye.
Good night, all.
Night.
Good night.
Talking about the difference with testing.